Okay, well, I've discussed some ridiculous subjects on this channel in the past, and I've probably discussed some good subjects ridiculously on this channel in the past, but this one's probably going to take the biscuit, because what I want to discuss today is it a civil liberties issue? Is it something for us to worry about when somebody mandates the maximum size of vessel in which we can place a carbonated beverage for the purpose of sale? This has cropped up because the Mayor of New York, Mayor Bloomberg, has mandated that carbonated beverages can't go in a vessel larger than 16 ounces on the grounds of public health. I first got a foot in the door with this with a video that Richard Coughlan made, who was responding to a video How the World Works made. I've watched both videos. I have to say, first off, I've got to give my biases. I have a kind of an unfair bias against Lee Doren, How the World Works, simply on the ground of the name of his channel, because it kind of suggests a kind of authoritativeness and lack of bias that his channel really doesn't possess. But I'm going to try and put that to one side there, and to show my bias there, let's make the first criticism at Coughlan. Coughlan, in the second half of his video, makes the point that surely there are more important things in the world that we could be talking about than this particular issue at hand. That is a fair point, but then it's a fair point that if you're going to make that point, you need to be making a million videos every single day. Most of our lives is concerned with surrounding ourselves with this kind of shit and trying to work this kind of shit out. Yes, you can make videos on all the big questions, but there comes a time where you've got to get down to the minutiae of life and comment on those things as well, because they're important to people in their everyday life, and sometimes they represent things that are bigger than they seem. And this is the argument that's being made here, that this is a civil liberties issue, this is perhaps the thin end of the wedge. Where's this going to lead to? But I don't think it is the thin end of the wedge, and I don't think this is without precedent. If somebody what we're talking about is what you ingest in your body and what we allow you to ingest in your body. This isn't just about your health. This is the important thing. Morbid obesity is the problem. And morbid obesity isn't just about the individual. It doesn't just impact on the individual. It impacts on their family. It impacts on all the people around them. It is something that can actually ruin lives. Not just dragging an individual down, but dragging a whole load of people down with them. It can also drag society down. It's a drain on society. It's took somebody out of circulation. But you do have to provide some kind of health care for that. Lee Doren makes the point in his follow-up video, fuck the bastards. If they want to get fat, we'll just let them rot in their own beds. Whilst he doesn't say that, what he says is this fits in with his principle of not providing health care. But what does he want to do? If he isn't going to let people just rot and fester and die in their own beds, he surely has to provide some level of health care somewhere along the line. So there's a lot of impacts going on there. What other situation do we have where people ingesting things where it doesn't just impact on themselves, it impacts on other people? Well, the example that I immediately sprung to mind as soon as this came up was the issue of drugs. I don't know what Lee Doren's position on drugs is. I know he's right-wing. Generally, most people who are right-wing don't have a very liberal position on drugs. They don't want you to ingest drugs in their body. And that's not because of the harm it's going to cause you, but because of the harm it's going to cause society, because of the harm it's going to cause your family. That's what it's all about. But the basic issues seem to be the same in both cases. Qualitatively, the only difference I can see between illegal drugs and these kind of issues involving food and the problem of morbid obesity is that drugs lead to crime. But they lead to crime because the drugs are illegal, so they're very, very expensive, they're hard to get hold of, and that pushes it in the sphere of crime. It's what happened with alcohol during Prohibition. It's what would happen with sugary and fatty foods if we made them entirely illegal. Qualitatively, there may be a difference. Some drugs are certainly worse for you dose for dose than a 32-ounce soda. I'm quite certain of that. But nobody's talking about banning carbonated, sugary, shit beverages entirely. If you still want to stick that crap down your throat, you're free to do so. Nobody's going to tell you that. It's a measured approach, and it's a measure that's perhaps appropriate to the problem. The point remains, if doing these things has an impact on your family, on society, then why can't we take some kind of measure? As long as it is a measured approach, as long as it's not over the top. So for myself, if you want my opinion, it's that we've been far too lax for far too long in allowing people to pump themselves as full as they like with sugary and fatty shit, regardless of the consequences on their family of morbid obesity and regardless of the consequences of morbid obesity on society. And with certain drugs, we've perhaps been far too strict, far too tunnel vision in our approach to those things. What I like to see is consistency, and I have to say on this occasion it's the people to the right of me that in the main have been inconsistent. This may not necessarily apply to Lee Doren himself, but there's many people who, when it comes to the subject of drugs, will bang the table as loudly as they can. Any suggestion that anything should be dealt with in a slightly more lenient fashion than it has, but once we have an issue that involves something like limiting you from having a 32-ounce glass of sugar shit down to a 16-ounce, that's a civil liberties issue. You can ingest what the fuck you like. Well, I don't see a lot of consistency in approach with regard to that. Everybody's got to make their own mind up on this. All I would suggest is that we're consistent with our approach, and that in each case the solution that we arrive at is commensurate and sensible given the nature of the problem for that individual thing. I do think there is a problem with morbid obesity, there is a problem with fatty foods, there is a problem with sugar-laden foods, and so some measures will have to be taken, I think. Well, that's my opinion. I'm interested what you have to think. Watch the videos that these other two guys have come up with, and any other videos around the subject. It's quite an interesting subject, even if ultimately it's a storm in a teacup. Thank you for watching this video anyway. Bye for now.